BBC News at 10.
Miniature soldiers, big opinions. This is the Conclave Podcast.
Welcome everybody to a very special episode of the Conclave. It's special because I'm in charge. Yes, it's my first time. I'm hosting this, what is probably going to be an absolute train wreck of a podcast, because generally what will end up happening, just like in D&D, is I'll ask them a question, they won't answer the correct, they won't answer the question that I've actually asked, and they'll talk about something completely different. Tangents are fine, guys.
No idea what you're talking about, mate.
But just listen to me, and you're already doing it now. And that voice that you heard there was, of course, the Sandman, Ed. Say hello, Ed.
Hello, how's everybody today?
Good.
Cool.
See, he's already taken over. What is this? What is this?
I'm scared to talk.
This is ridiculous. I was going to come to you next, Rich. I was going to call you the true sex appeal of this podcast. But Rich, hello.
Well, I'm good, thank you. But first of all, I'd like to point out that Quipster just mentioned that his hairline's fading.
It
and
is.
looked me dead in the eye and said that when I've got no fucking hair. And he's got a glorious hair. So I'm a bit upset.
It's
Don't
not
worry,
great.
it's a thing that's happening.
Maybe he could lend you some of his spare hair.
I don't have any spare hair, that's the issue.
I have some on my back I don't need, Rich.
The other day, I actually referred to Quipster as being a little too Patrick Bateman, and I'm starting to think that you look in the mirror every morning and tweeze out a single grey hair. Is that what you do?
No, I keep those two. I've got loads on the side, actually.
Oh, well, good for you. That is, of course, the aesthetically pleasing member of the podcast. We have Quipster, who believes he's balding. And rounding out the cast today, we, of course, have the legal department, the possibly the greatest hobbyist of us all. We have Adam himself.
Hello there! I was going to say, because you are running the show today, may God have mercy on us all.
He will not. He will not. If you hand me the keys to the castle, I will destroy it from the inside.
Now bend over.
Yes. Come on,
That
all
got
of you.
weird.
I can see you on camera and you're
That
not
got
doing
weird.
it. Rich, put your trousers on. Anyway, yes, welcome to the Conclave. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. We're going to be checking out what everybody's been doing in this year that already feels like a decade after the events of the last week in democracy. But we're going to try not to talk about that one too much, because it's a little too 40k, if you know what I mean.
Well, we can't talk about it because I've been censored, I've been banned, I've been removed. It's an outrage. I have the best words. I'm disgusted.
Yeah, we don't. Just to clarify, we don't have him on the on the podcast. I'm going to take a leaf out of Stephen Colbert's book, and I'm always going to censor his name from now on. So we are going to be looking at what we've been doing in 2021 so far, and then we're going to be talking about the big elephant in the room that everybody wants to talk about, the F.A.Q. Lots of stuff has changed, and we're going to be just kind of picking out our favourite bits and our least favourite bits, or anything that we just simply don't care about. So we're going to be talking about what we've done in 2021 first, and I'm going to pick out random, looking across my screen. I'm going to pick you, Ed. Ed, what have you been working on in 2021?
Cool, yes. I've had a cool week, actually. I've been working on two Ivaras. Ivaras are, for those who aren't familiar, a Forge World unit for the Tau. They are essentially massive riptides, who I'm sure everybody knows, but they've been geared out to have flamers and also like an ion cannon, which is like Tau plasma. They're really cool. They're very expensive. They're very short-range guns, so they offer a really kind of different play style. But they've been really fun to build. So I have on my Tau bases kind of a autumnal planetary forest going on, and I've actually, for the front half of their bases, kind of tried to make it look like it's really charred. So it was quite a fun modelling week for me in that respect.
You're using those little leaves, aren't you?
Yeah, the little leaves from Green Stuff World. You can actually just make them yourself if you have the little hole punches, which I've heard are really, really good. But I like to remove as many steps from hobbying as I can, so I can't fuck up as much. So I've actually just bought the leaves.
Those look so good. I love those.
Yeah, they're actually they are definitely one of my favourite basing materials by quite a long way. If you've got bases that are quite bland and you want to add something, I really recommend them. They're not that expensive, and I think you can get them now because they're a Spanish company, Green Stuff World. I'm not sure if you how easy it is to get.
God, yeah. Well, actually,
Whilst we're having
I was going to
all
say,
these
Ed,
problems.
as well. Like the Yavaras, they're resin, right?
Yeah, so you get like a Riptide kit with it, and then you get kind of the classic Forge World. Then you get like Forge World resin bits to go on top.
It's effectively an upgrade kit for a Riptide, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
A really
really?
expensive resin upgrade kit for a Riptide.
So wait, the base and model's plastic.
Yeah. So there's similar
didn't know they did
ones
that.
like in Eldar. You've got the Skatach Wraith Knight. I think that's how you say it. It's a Wraith Knight with a different head, basically. Oh, and a couple of different guns, and I think it's got some fins as well. But that's cool. Have you shared a picture of those Yavaras on anywhere?
I haven't. Then they're not too far from being done. I've just got to weather them, and then they should be done. They've got very cool guns, so I'm tempted to add some more effects onto them actually. But yeah, I will do in the future, I'm sure.
It's kind of like an enormous shotgun flamer cannon of plasma flamer cannon of doom type thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think for those of you that listen to the Forge World podcast that we talked about, I probably would have mentioned them because they were probably the epitome of crazy Forge World unit before, because they had this flamer that was 3d6 shots, strength 6, -2, damage 3, which was just
That's
obviously
horrendous.
So now it's all gone down. It's strength 5 -1 damage 1. So it's gone down a lot, thankfully, but it's still a really, really cool unit.
Yes. So, from doing something super cool with a towel, Rich, what have you been doing?
Well, so I've just finished painting 5 infiltrators, 3 eradicators, and 5 assault intercessor sergeants. So basically, just 5 assault intercessors with power fists. I'm currently basing 5 Death Company, which have 2 Thunder Hammers and a power fist, just spice things up a little bit. Painting some eliminators. I'm waiting to prime some Lord of the Rings Urukai Berserkers. Lurtz and his bro that comes in the box of him, whose name I've actually forgotten.
Ugluck?
No way is his name Ugluck. That is not a thing.
Ugluck is a model. I
What?
believe Ugluck was the one though that is.
Ed is right.
Yeah.
What?
He's holding a. He's the guy who chops. You know when there's like meats back on the menu, boys. He's the one who chops the guy's head
That's
off.
him.
Oh,
Ed,
shit.
you are beautiful and smart.
Whoever edits this, can you just cut out the bit where Rich says Ed is right and just send it to me? I would.
Well, you can
Beautiful and right.
pin that one to your wall.
We'll get
Just
that
having a soundboard.
We'll get that on the Conclave soundboard.
Ed was right.
DJ, Ed is
It'll be
right.
used one at a time.
Next time I berate you about something on COD, you could just play that back to me. And I'm also doing three eliminators, so I've got like a bit all over the place. But
You're going for a similar target as me this year, aren't you? You're going
I've
for
been inspired by
360.
you.
You're going for 365 models in a 365 year.
Yeah, me too.
Wow. That's cool.
yeah. So I'm 13 models in
You
already.
can shut up. Okay. You need to hit 3 figures before you can even think about 365. Thank you very much.
I think, what did you do? 65 models last year.
I believe it was 66 in the end. The Hammerfall counts as 1.
Are we just quoting Lord
Still
of the
only
Rings now?
counts as one.
Literally.
Yeah, so I'm 13 models, 9 days in. Spoiler for this is when we're recording it for everyone, because we're so professional like that. And yeah,
Awesome.
To that point, the F.A.Q is actually, I think, yesterday at this point, or like 2 days ago at this point of recording, so that's why we get all of this wrong.
yeah, there'll be another set of FAQs before we're even allowed to play. So
Yeah, and
Genuinely.
we'll probably release the retraction episode 3 or 4 days after this. Awesome. I'm going to go to you next, Quipster. What have you sort of thought about doing this year?
I painted an intercessor leg. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Hey now, I will have you know that I have almost finished painting a Phobos lieutenant, and he is beautiful. But like, there's a whole bunch of stuff at the moment that I'm sort of working on. Some of it is related to painting and models. Some of it is related to just my wider hobby in Warhammer, and I kind of include it. So, shameless plug, I've just started a podcast video kind of series with Winters. Name drop.
You know Winters?
I do actually. And amusingly, all of you do as well. So you can't actually make that joke.
Yeah, but we don't bring it up even at least 5% of the time that you do.
Hey, it's called marketing, okay? But so I've started what's called the Fireside Chat with him. I'm going to be interviewing a bunch of other DZTV guys on that as well. So that should be really good.
Where did you get the inspiration for the name Fireside Chat?
It's what FDR used to do during the Depression. He would sit down and talk to the nation. And I thought, when we were coming up with ideas, I was just like, actually, that kind of works. It invokes that kind of imagery of two people sitting down, like over a fire, just chatting about stuff. And also, it meant that it wasn't personalized to either Winters or me. So the Fireside Chat doesn't have to be me talking. It can be Liam if he wants to lead it. It can be Winters if he wants to lead it. It just kind of gave us a bit more creative freedom.
You should listen to it because it is, not only is the name inspired by FDR, it is just 30 minutes of Alex and Winters sitting there just going, "Oh, we live in dark times." So that's a bit JFK, but no.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That was very JFK.
I ask you to believe that new codexes are on the way.
Also, the fact that you said the name doesn't tie it to Winters or you, does that mean we've been fucking up because there has not been a single Eldar Warlock in any of these podcasts?
What?
No one gets that joke?
I get it. I get it.
I get the joke. I get the joke.
I mean, I get the joke, but like that is such
Wait,
a niche joke.
I would also like to ask this
In a niche
question.
hobby.
Are there literally any fireplaces involved in your Fireside Chat?
Not one.
So in fact, the whole thing is a lie.
Everything is a lie.
Okay.
Also,
good.
incidentally, I feel like we need to explain Ed's joke to the people, our listener, who probably won't understand it.
All of the best jokes are the ones that are explained in great, vivid detail.
Why don't we leave it
Precisely.
there? Maybe people will message us, and then you can do a
some
separate
fucking
bonus
homework,
episode
right?
where you explain it. But until then, the person who does get it, the one person who does get it, can just sit there and continue to stew about it.
I mean, if I get it, I'm pretty sure they'll get it.
Or one of them.
You are, why would you do yourself like that, Rich? You are a very intelligent young man, and
I think that sometimes, and then all of you start having a conversation about something, and then I just smile and nod.
You're a smart young boy, and if you really try hard in school, you could go far. You could be a doctor or a lawyer or anything you want to be. I believe in your son.
Amazing.
That brought a tear to my eye.
But yeah, that's a little bit of hobby progress. I've just finished actually building, undercoating, and magnetizing a repulsor executioner that I have next to me. And
in that order.
No. Yes? I don't know. It's
Slow
been
down,
a weird
Alex.
year.
You're going too fast.
But yeah, it took me a while, but as you guys know, I love magnets. And there were a couple of things I wanted to try for the first time with the magnets. So like completely unnecessary things, like magnetizing some of the weapons options, some of which aren't even optional extras. They're just already on the tank. Essentially just for I say the thrill, but just for the like hobbying of it, if that makes any sense.
No, you made a mistake, and now you're trying to justify it.
No, not at all. Like for example, for storage, I always keep the turrets off tanks, and the Gladiator especially, I kept on moving it, and the turret fell off, and the aerial kept on breaking. So I was like, fuck it. So I magnetized the turrets to the main body of it with some plasticard, which was quite nice.
I feel like though that's the definition of a pointless magnet, because it's not like the turret isn't designed to just come off and move.
Yeah, but I didn't want it I didn't want the options to fall off, even if I like knocked it or something, or in transport, for example, because I've got the magnetic cases. Do you see what I mean?
I do. You know my feelings on magnets.
In that they are the devil's work and you'll never use them.
I think there are legitimate uses for them some of the time. Magnetizing something that comes off or does not have a separate option, I think, is a complete waste of time.
Well, we can agree to disagree.
No, we can't. Anyway, we're going to move on to the I'm in charge, so we get to move on and I win. Legal department, what have you been doing this year?
Hello. This year, so much like Reza, I have actually I've done 13 models. So I have finished these Sanguinary Guard, one of which I will hold up for the camera right now, who came out very nicely. They are made with the bodies of Stormcast Eternals to avoid the slight issues I have with the actual Sanguinary Guard sculpt, which if anyone's listened to, it was episode 12 of this podcast, they will know, and they know they largely revolve around having abs on your knee, because that's just a bit weird. But yeah, they came out, yeah, exactly, yeah, they came out really nicely, and they are mounted on authentic Welsh slate. From the mountains of Wales, you don't have to use that as basic materials, but this is a good use of some slate that I picked up when I went on holiday to Wales, when we were allowed to go on such things earlier in the year. I've also finished up some Inceptors, which had been sitting around for a long time and just needed to be sort of the last few bits done on them. And other than that, I'm working on some Death Company. And I've also taken the first steps towards my Tyrannid army that I kept talking about as sort of a 2021 hobby goal, with this happy chappy here, who's got 4 arms, 4 swords, plus sort of the one on his head that's a crest. It's everyone's favourite General Grievous organic lookalike. It's the Swarmlord. He's awesome, and I love him, and he's excellent.
He is a absolutely breathtaking model. I wish that he appeared in every Tyrannid's list. It's unfortunate that he doesn't, because he's also the type of kit that you can, like, I've seen a lot of people do a lot of really cool things with that kit and not a lot of additions, just in terms of posing him, which is always a benefit. I think.
So I'm a bit unclear actually about the Swarmlord, because like all of my knowledge about Tyranids basically comes from when I read their codex in the late 90s. So, like,
who was president?
Oh, the Clinton administration. Ah, yes.
Well, early 2000s, so more into Bush more than anything else. But they got a major redesign sort of near the end of third, I think.
Was it inspired by Bush?
Yeah. Sorry. Shut up, Reza. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, he's so. What is it that you don't get about him? What he is, or it is? It doesn't. I mean, it's Tyrannid. It doesn't have a gender.
It's so like the Swarmlord is like above the level of the Hive Tyrant.
Yeah, so a Swarmlord is basically a variant of a Hive Tyrant, and not just in the sense it comes in the same box in the model. So the Swarmlord is evolved by the Hive fleet when it needs basically something that's in charge that can be a bit creative. So it has a degree of independence from the Hive mind that others, even Hive Tyrants, which are, far more sort of actually have self-awareness in a way that like a Gaunt doesn't. It's above them in that sense. And the idea behind it is that unlike every other creature in the Tyrannid arsenal, which basically just gets spawned, does its job, and then dies, and then that's it, and then they just spawn a new one, and there's no kind of retention there apart from just of the actual biomass, the sort of soup that makes them up. The idea with the Swarmlord is every time it dies, every time it dies, its consciousness, its memories are effectively recorded by the hive mind constantly, and then it just gets uploaded into a new body on a new battlefield. The idea being that it learns. So it is like the embodiment of the overall hive mind. It learns from every time it loses, and therefore when it comes up against an enemy that the hive mind's tactics can't beat, it spawns a Swarmlord who then directs, the Tyrannid forces in the area and uses sort of creative tactics based on, literally millions and millions of years of fighting and dying and coming back and winning, just constantly to win the battle and ultimately turn everybody into a delicious paste. So yeah, he's really cool kit, and it's just a very good looking model, and yeah, it has some fun lore behind it, and it is good on the battlefield. It does have some interesting, so it's got an ability called Hive Commander, where you can basically just say to a unit, instead of shooting, move again. And the thing that you always see this used for is either on itself to scoot itself up the board, but you can also use it on things like Gene Stealers, which obviously don't shoot at all, and if you're running them as Hive Fleet Kraken, when it's move again, you can also advance again, so you can do basically get some Gene Stealers, move them, do a 3d6 advance, then move them again, then do another 3d6 advance, and then they can still charge with I think with a strat or a psychic power. So you can absolutely fling them across the board. But he does suffer from what a lot of Tyranid models suffer from, which is that they are a bit squishy in the current meta for what they are, right? For the big monstrous creature, they're not that tough, and concentrated gunfire can bring them down, which I guess sort of reflects reality and the fluff of it. But yeah, it's a really, really cool character, and I'm looking forward to painting it up and using it on the tabletop at some point when we're allowed to do so.
I was gonna say, is that the first model in your Hive fleet that you've built?
It's yes, it is. Yeah, it is going to be the first one. So I thought what I'm going to do, I need to do some test schemes. So I'm gonna build. I've got obviously some Gene Stealers knocking about, and I'm gonna build those or Tyranid Warriors. And I've actually also, one of the reasons I wanted to do Tyranids this year is because I've got Gene Stealers, the old style Gene Stealer kit from like 10 years ago. Like that I found lying around alongside my old hobby nonsense. So I'm gonna paint some of them up in test schemes, and I think the idea that Sandman and I have been talking about is that my Tyranids will be the Hive fleet for his Gene Stealer cult.
That's such a cool idea.
I really like his scheme anyway that he's done on his Patriarch, and the sort of the look of the GSC that Ed's done. So I'm probably going to do like a slight variant on that, because obviously the Hive fleet has gone round consuming lots of planets, and it would be like, I mean, when I say a variant, it will be like, I don't know, some green edging or something to make it look a bit different. But yeah, like a sort of pterodon turquoise on the armor and sort of a greyish skin. So yeah, I think they're going to look quite cool.
Have you come up with a designation yet?
No, so the one I thought about was, I was thinking of the monsters in Greek mythology, Scylla and Charybdis. And Charybdis is the whirlpool.
Charybdis would be a great name.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think there is one of those though in the lore. I'll have to have a check. But I was trying to think the other day of sort of like mythical, Leviathan type creatures, because obviously we've got sorry, this is turning into like a Tyranid podcast, but if you know the Tyranid Codex, there are Hive fleets like obviously Leviathan, Kraken, Kronos. There's also Jormungandr. What other ones have we got? There's I want to say Moloch.
Hydra's one.
Hydra,
that's
another one. There's also the other one that's building the big.
There's Behemoth, isn't there?
Behemoth is the other big one, of course. So yeah, there's they're all named after sort of mythical monstrosities. Kronos, of course, was the lord of the Titans, the Greek Titans, and father of Zeus.
Could you possibly consider something like Hive Fleet Foot and Mouth?
Hive Fleet Corona.
Just because Ed, we all know your Gene Stealer cults. You're based on an agri world. So I feel like we could go back into our human history and figure out events that devastated the farming community of our world, and the only one I can think of off the top of my head that we lived through was the foot and mouth thing. So Hive Fleet Foot and Mouth.
I mean, you can get away with all sorts there. Yeah, Hive Fleet Enclosures Act of the late 18th century.
I was going to say Hive Fleet Potato Famine.
Yeah, Hive Fleet Variant CJD. Now, these are probably all quite offensive in many ways, so let's not do that.
I think
I'm pretty sure in Greek mythology either there was a chimera or like a really big boar that...
the 12 Labours of Hercules. Yeah. But there's the Nemean lion. That's quite a good one, the Nemean lion. That he fights,
Sorry, lion?
where he gets the I was going to say you heard lion, so as Ed's interested. No, but I like Charybdis. I think it's cool, something like that. I was trying to think of something to do with like mythical sort of worms and stuff like that are a part of history, because I think that sort of fits.
Earthworm Jim.
Hive Fleet Jim.
Yeah, Hive Fleet
Incredibly
Jim.
mundane Hive Fleet Jim.
Yeah,
Better than Hive Fleet Steve.
Hive Fleet Spud. I mean, come on.
Actually, Hive Fleet Spud's cool.
Hive Fleet Spuds, Jesus.
Hive Fleet McCain, because McCain oven chips made out of Spud.
I thought you were making it really bad.
Tyranids are often sort of crispy on the outside, kind of fluffy on the inside. So yeah, they are like an oven chip in many ways.
Exactly. Well, So I think you've all been a lot busier than me. All I've done is paint a Space Wolf Gladiator.
One more gladiator than me.
One of my favourite tutorials of yours, though, mate. Like that is, guys, and I say this to Josh all the time. Like, it's probably the biggest hesitation that people have with contrast paint, because I think everybody kind of is on the page now of like, it is really good, but how do you do vehicles? And so it is nice to get proper tutorials where and this is your second one now.
I'm setting a bit of a dangerous precedent here, because I've done a Space Wolves vehicle, I've done a Blood Angels vehicle. I'm worried that the Drakari combat patrol is going to contain something like a Ravager or something like that. And I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to have to do a Ravager tutorial. Same as I think there's possibly going to be something like a Plague Burst crawler in the Death Guard combat patrol, which I know I'm probably going to have to do as well. So yeah, it might be setting a slightly dangerous precedent in that I'll end up doing vehicle tutorials for the rest of my days. There's also that possibility that the supplements, the Space Marine supplements, will all get a combat patrol. I'd like to see it. I'd love to see, combat patrol Iron Hands. But what I'm worried about is that those things will all start containing things like impulsors and stuff like that. At which point, rather than having a collection of how to paint an intercessor from each of the Space Marine factions, I'm going to end up with a bloody how to paint a vehicle from each of them. And then I'm going to have nowhere to store the damn things because they take up so much space in my IKEA shelves that I can't even be bothered to put them in there. Like, I've got a Razorback in there, and it's like it's taking up the space of a whole 10 miniatures, and I can't afford, nor do I have the space to buy more cabinets. So if you're listening, GW, please don't put vehicles in every single combat patrol, because those of us who are mad enough to make a tutorial series about all of them, we're struggling. Particularly those of us who are deciding to do it with contrast paint. But yes, I did this. I've done a Space Wolf Gladiator. And I've also nearly finished 5 Death Company intercessors. There's also going to get a tutorial. And I've built a very special model. Some of you will have seen it on Instagram, and it's coming very soon.
That's going to be very interesting.
Some people like to paint Warhammer models, but some people don't have storage. For just a small fee, you can support painters like Warhipster on Ko-Fi and Patreon. And you can make sure that he has enough storage space so that this winter he can paint a model, a transport model, or some sort of vehicle from every single faction. Warhipster. Do it because we care.
Saying this though,
this took a dark tone.
If I ever just come into some amount of money, or for some reason end up with an X amount of money to just
a rich girl.
I am absolutely just going to buy Josh a Warlord Titan.
Thanks.
Like a proper one. And with the stipulation that you can only paint it with a brush and contrast paints.
I mean, I would do that anyway.
Yeah, but I would love to facilitate that and just watch that process.
I mean, bring it on, mate. I'll do it. If you want to waste your money... So if you, like Rich says, if you marry a lady and for whatever reason, for some reason, her family pays a dowry for you, and you get all of the money, and you decide that you are going to spend a significant chunk of that on a Warlord Titan for me to paint with contrast paint and a brush, I'll do it. I bring it on. I will happily do it. It'll be hilarious fun, and I'll still get it done quicker than you will do a Primaris Lieutenant.
I just have this image now of this image now of Josh painting away Quipster, and you just sort of sat on a chair in the corner with a cigar and a brand, just going yes, more, my bidding.
That's kind of what I'm imagining as well. Is that it's like a murder mystery library.
Where do you think I live?
Well, I'm assuming that with the rest of this money that you've come into for the Warlord Titan is that you've also bought some sort of weirdly ironic manor. And that's where you now live.
In central London.
Yeah,
and he's edge-heighted all his bathroom tiles.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Fucking don't tempt me with that shit.
You will find a Google Home in every room of my 17-wing mansion.
I would do that.
which will weirdly play the same soft jazz, but it'll all be slightly syncopated, half a beat out from each other. So as you walk around, it's just oddly dissonant and sounds like a creepy hell house.
Just end up with like Kenny G stuck in your head, but yeah, like a demonic version.
Yeah.
I never listened much to Kenny G. Soweto Kinch is my jazz saxophonist of choice.
This is a world exclusive, guys.
Welcome to Magic
Ed
Jazz
generally
Hour.
looks bored. Ed looks like he's gonna fall asleep to that comment.
What? His first album was amazing.
Mine?
Yeah, sure.
Or-
We'll take your word for it.
Ed's first soft jazz saxophonist album is possibly the greatest masterpiece I've ever heard in my life. In that it doesn't exist.
I can see Ed playing jazz.
Yeah, they actually got the name Sandman because when he plays his sax, he takes you to a land of dreams.
Oh.
It's actually the recorder, but thank you guys.
So, with all of that being said, it's now time to move on. We're going to talk about the F.A.Q. Now, I'm going to, much like whenever we play D&D, guys, I'm going to use a D20 to decide who gets to complain first. So, here we go. What was it? There's 4 of you, and there's 1 of me. So, D20 side dice, what's that? That's 5. So, 1 to 5, whatever. Okay, so that is a 7. So, Quipster, you get to go first.
Okay.
What do you want to complain to Games Workshop about in the FAQ, or praise them, of course?
Yeah, I mean, I want to start off with a compliment, actually, and this is something that a lot of Custodes, in fact, no, every Custodes player out there was a bit like, "What the hell is this?" The keyword situation for Alea and Valerian. If you guys don't know.
I've just made a quick DM check. Unfortunately, you're barred from talking anything about Custodes, so you can talk about anything else.
Oh, damn.
So Sisters of Silence.
Well, actually, yeah, this does actually pertain to Sisters of Silence as well. But, yeah, basically, Valerian and Alea, for those who don't know, are 2 characters that appear in the Watchers of the Throne series by Chris Raitt.
They're girlfriend-boyfriend, right?
I mean, they may as well be. They are phenomenal characters, and I love them.
I was meant to annoy you.
But honestly, if you haven't read those books, they are absolutely phenomenal. Highly recommend them. It's one of the few books that really gets Custodes right. But yeah, so they are 2 of the main characters in those books, and they finally came out as
Quick
models.
question. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you too much, but do these books get Custodes right because the Custodes win in it?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah,
It's not just that. They get the tone of Custodes right, because it's really easy with Custodes to make them out to be like essentially omnipotent gods of war. But there are certain things that they're just really bad at, or things that are just missing from them. So the tone of the book can be kind of off if they're too human. Good example of that is something like Auric Gods, for example, where they just display kind of too much emotion, if that makes sense. They're too human in the way that they interact with each other and everything around them. Whereas in Watchers of the Throne, and especially in Valdor, Birth of the Imperium, Valdor is a really good example, because Valdor, this isn't really a spoiler, but if you don't want to know, don't listen to this. There's a bit in the book where Valdor compares himself to one of the Thunder Warriors, and he really respects him, and he's kind of, in a way, jealous of this Thunder Warrior, because this Thunder Warrior has passion and rage and emotion, and he's a fiery person. And he's, even on the battlefield, he's like quipping with Valdor, and Valdor is just kind of stoically just fighting, because that's just what Custodes do. And he's kind of sitting there lamenting the fact that he can't feel the things that this Thunder Warrior can, because it's just not how he's built and not what he's for. So I think it's that kind of tone.
This is a really weird FAQ that they've FAQ'd that you have to play Valerian and Alea with less human.
Let's make it weirder. Based on Josh last night was showing us his sort of music choices he uses when certain situations arise, and I don't know why, but I just have an image now of Valdor on the battlefield watching these Thunder Warriors, passionately living out their dreams of war, and it just fading to black and white. And I want to know what Love Is playing slowly as it zooms in on his face.
That's
kind of
now.
that scene in the book that I described. It's essentially kind of that. It kind of is.
Oh God!
But
But
yes,
Valerian gets that from Alea.
yeah, exactly. So like the bond between Valerian and Alea is like super interesting. I mean, the first time they ever meet, it talks about how like the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence, even though they haven't really fought together for like 10,000 years, they're both surprised about how easily they like form this fighting line, and they just slip into each other's like fighting like techniques, and they just kind of do it on instinct, and they're all like, oh, this is cool. But yeah, anyway,
Lost me at slip in.
but going back to the tabletop, obviously one of the things that a lot of Custodes players were complaining about was the fact that the keywords were such that you couldn't use Valerian and Alea in a Custodes army because they didn't have the Custodes keyword. They had the Talons of the Emperor keyword. That has finally changed in this FAQ. So a lot of Custodes players are like, yes, finally. They're, however, 200 points, so you'd never take them in any kind of competitive match.
Yeah,
but
they're
it's
expensive.
nice that you can legally do that.
Yeah. Well, you also got, I mean, on to keep this in the realm of the tabletop, you also got a 10-point reduction on the Virtus Praetors, the
Yeah.
bugs, right?
I was
which
about
is
to-
quite big, yeah.
Exactly, I was about to come onto that actually. The big changes are minus 10 points on the jet bikes, plus a few points on the Terminators with axes, and minus for the spear and shield guardians. And I can sort of like go through that really
And
quickly
your banner
because
is free.
and the banner is
Yeah,
free.
Banner, yeah. That's got to be an error, right?
No, as far as I'm aware, it's now free.
Oh,
But
yeah, I suppose banners are free.
yeah, I mean, the thing with all of that is they're very subtle tweaks. And if you look at the way the Custodes point changes have changed, it's clear that whoever did these does play Custodes and has done recently, because hardly anyone's taking many bikes anymore. Everyone's taking axe Terminators, and they are kind of undercosted for considering the strats that you can put on them now. So everything I've seen out of Custodes is
Kind of
pretty
undercosted.
well. Okay, 5 points.
If that banner is free, this is a bit insane to me. That if your list contains multiple Virtus Praetors, right? So if your list contains multiple Virtus Praetors and you've got a Vexilla banner in there, and the banner is now free and the Virtus Praetors are all cheaper, it's almost at the point where you can afford a second banner now.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
No, that's not awesome. That's
It
somebody
is awesome.
that's somebody who said, I want to put more Custodes on the table, and they don't need
Yeah.
more Custodes on the table. Honestly, I thought they were pointed fine.
There are some things I think needed changes. I would like to see some more changes to things like the Venatari, which are the Forge World jump pack ones. But generally speaking, the changes they've made, less points for the jet bikes, more points for the Terminators, I think those are deserved entirely. I would like to see Valerian and Alea come down in points, because it would be nice to see them a bit more on the table when I get around to painting them at some time in 2022. But I think I'm pretty happy with everything I've seen from the Custodes FAQ.
I'm going to ask you potentially a difficult question. Is there anything other than the Custodes that you looked at?
There is not.
Good. Right. In that case, we're going to go to Ed. Tell us all about the FAQ and how you're so happy with all of the Tau points changes.
I am happy actually with the FAQ. The Tau thing is kind of a stain on an otherwise very, very balanced game, in my opinion. And so I'll circle back to Tau actually. It's not really representative of how I feel in completion. So I really, really like this FAQ. It has massively closed the gap between what was already a very balanced game, barring Tau. It's really done well. Like Space Marines took a couple of hits, Sisters took a couple of hits, Harlequins took a couple of hits, and then everyone else has got a little bit cheaper. And that's really, really good. That's what you want to see in a competitive scene, is that everything's kind of gone closer to the same line, which is really, really positive. The problem with Tau is that, and in fact, Josh actually hits a really good point there with Custodes. He's like, why is there action to make things cheaper? When something like Custodes, you should want to make Custodes better, and you'd want a few Custodes on the field. That is particularly a good point for Custodes, I must say. But the thing is, generally speaking, that is how everybody feels. Like, even with Tau, it's like, well, we don't want Tau just to get cheaper. The problem is that then they have terrible rules, which is true, and I would want better rules for the Tau. The problem is that we can't just get the Codex. That might be a while away. So this is where I just don't understand how you don't just make the Tau far cheaper. It's like I'm fine with the Tau. If the GW's like, look, the Tau Codex is going to be away. They're a company. They've got quarterly targets. They're going to space things out. That's fine. But like, I don't understand why you have to make them so bad. Like, why are we paying for Markalites? Why are Pathfinders as expensive as they are? These are things that are just awful, and they're so easy to change and make free. Like, Tau are always going to be a boring army until the Codex comes out, but they don't have to be as shit as they are now. You can just make them better, and that for me is where the shock comes. But overall, that's very faction specific, and I think I said on the other podcasts, Tau are like the faction that is the standout to me.
If I gave you right now, Magic Wand, one wish list thing, just one,
yep,
that you would do to the Tau, right? Just one.
Just one.
that you would do, that you would think that would go a long way towards fixing them. What would it be and why?
It's tough. It's tough when you only give one, because, like, if I gave them a buff, I'm not going to say that wouldn't come with a points increase. So that's the only thing I would say. But the thing that I would do is that Tau do need a 3. They're not going to get it because we've had the 4-12 book. So this is a pointless point to say. But if you could fix them with the smallest thing, it would be to give them a 3 at ballistic skill, because they need a 3 at ballistic skill, because they are an army that is active in one phase. It's also really weird from the game design point of view to point those models, because you can either make Tau hit on 4s and make them cheaper, in which case you're just going to have way more models on the board, or you have them hit on 3s and then you have less models on the board, and that's generally speaking a better way to do it. Markalites are so shit that you just have to discount them. They're just not a part of the game.
It's a bit of a shame that because I do really enjoy the Tau as well. It's a bit of a shame that they I think are still suffering from I guess they were the undisputed kings, I think, of 7th edition, because the Markalites worked a lot differently then. So what you would do is you would fire all of your Markalites, and you'd spend the Markalite tokens that you'd hit with to improve the ballistic skill by 1 of all units shooting at it. So what you would do is typically you would see like 10 Markalites hit something. What you could then do is spend all 10 of those Markalites to put your Riptides hitting it on a 2 plus re-rolling, that type of thing, which was quite a lot. It is a shame that I think they are still suffering for that, because you couldn't move for love nor money for fighting a Triptide list. Like that was what you would fight, and I think a lot of what 8th edition spent the times that I did fight Tau lists in 8th edition, they were pretty much Triptide lists that were left over from 7th. It seems a bit harsh that it's because obviously I've played one game of 9th edition, so and I wholeheartedly trust you, Ed, on everything that you have to say about Tau, and it is a shame that I think they're still suffering in the doldrums a little bit.
There are lots of units in the game that they could just drop the points on and it would make no impact at all, and I just never get why they don't. Like I just never get why they're like, oh yeah, well, Elarian and whatever his fucking name is. Like, why don't they just drop the points by 30 points? Like, what difference does that make to the game? Like, it just makes you're just going to sell more of them, right? I just don't get why they never do these things. That always just shocks me. But I think overall it's really good.
The only other thing I say about Tau is that like it seems that the Tau faction as a whole is worse off in 8th and 9th than it was in 7th, and I think, as I say, that is punishment for the 7th edition hijinks that they had. Eldar suffered the same thing, but they suffered it on one unit and one unit alone, and that was the Wraith Knight.
Why?
because the Wraith Knight was horrible in 7th edition.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant right now.
Yeah,
Wasn't that what people used to do? They used to bring the Taldar list that was the sort of combination of both.
Yeah. There was a. I think you used to put stuff like Tau breaches inside Wave Serpents and things like that, which was because there was something called Fish of Fury. Anyway, we're getting into 7th edition. It's completely unreal. But I think the same thing that has happened to the entire. This is where kind of my point is that the same thing that has happened to Tau happened to one unit in the Eldar book. Because the Eldar were very good for a large portion of 8th. And I don't know why the Tau weren't. So, is there anything else from the F.A.Q that stood out to you, Ed?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. So I mean, yeah, on the tower, the drones going up. That's a great example where it's like there's just things that are left over because nobody that plays the game is complaining about drones at the moment. So it was clearly a leftover complaint that they were like, right, we're going to up the points again. That's going to be a weird one. But
they're 20 points now, aren't they, Ed?
The 20 points if you take them as a squad. And then they're cheaper if you take them. There's the points are split if you take them as just a secondary one, with a crisis commander or whatever. The one good thing, I would say that is good is that Monk card did change. So one of the things what that means is that Tau can now fall back and shoot, and that's a really big deal. That alone is actually huge because it's only for 2 turns with Farsight. Most people play Farsight anyway now, but 2 turns is kind of all you need. A lot of the time with Tau shooting. So that's really great to see.
I was going to say, in terms of drones and their kind of lore position in the Tau army, the way that it used to be played in 8th was you would take swarms and swarms of drones, and you would just pass off all the wounds onto those drones. How is it actually supposed to work? In the lore for Tau, what's the relationship they have with the drones? Because they're it's not just a robot; it's like an AI. And don't they just bond with the AI, every squad or commander?
Yeah. So they are. Yeah, the drones have names, and they do talk to the drones. It is a much more personal relationship than you get in the game. Hopefully, we'll get some new kind of mechanic there. There's the Apocalypse type mechanic where you have drones and then they just give the units buffs. So it could be something like that. That could be cool.
I think that was how it used to be in 7th. If you took a shield drone, the unit got a buff. And then, because I think it's almost this thing of my wishlist item would be to drop drones as a separate unit entity and have them bought as war gear that give the unit buffs. And then when you shoot at the unit, you can choose to remove it's up to the player who owns the Tau to remove the drone. Do you see what I mean?
Or they could remove a piece of war gear rather than remove a model or something.
Yeah, because that's when you take them as additionals, they become a separate unit. Tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, Ed. If you take it as an additional thing to a unit of fire warriors, for example, the 2 drones become a separate unit. That then gives up a victory point really easily. Right?
Yeah.
If I may, Ed, can I ask you a quick question? Have the fusion blasters rules aligned with melter gun or the melter rules now?
They haven't, which I don't mind. I don't want every gun in the book to be melter, quote unquote, and then act the same. So I'm fine if Space Marines were the better. I would guess some Fire Dragon should have kind of the best type of melter. I don't know what I would do for them. But I'd be fine for different melter to work in different ways. But yes, that was interesting that didn't change.
Do you feel like GW kind of know where they're going with the Tau? Because I think I'd imagine that they have a lot of the codexes written way in advance.
Yeah.
So that's the bit that concerns me from reading it. It also gives the impression that I kind of feel like I don't know if they know where they're going.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, Rich. There's basically no downside to giving Tower 3 a ballistic skill is the thing, and they're obviously not going to do that. Well, it's very unlikely they're going to do that because in the Forge World book they don't, maybe the Forge World book was written so long before the Tower Codex. I don't know. Maybe there's something like that. The only thing I would say is that we've seen factions change so much in 9th edition. So Tower could be completely different, and that is something that's really kind of hopeful about 9th edition, and why, as Adam mentioned on the last podcast, or the one before, how the Drukhari book is a huge indicator, because we expected Space Marines to get a lot, because the Space Marines, Necrons would, and Death Guard are already quite good, so we expect them to be quite good still. But if Drukhari completely change in their kind of like position in the game, then that's a really strong indicator that they're actually rebuilding up every faction from the ground up. And Tau could be completely different to what they were in 8th edition. There are some problems with Tau that come from the fluff. So one of the big problems with the Markalite system is the nature of the Pathfinder. So there is only one source of Markalites, that's reliable fluff-wise, and that is Pathfinders, and I'll include Tetris in that. The problem with that is that you cannot have, in the game, your entire army dependent on a unit that is toughness 3 with a 5-up save, because what happens when anybody plays Tau? The Pathfinders die turn 1. There's a good chance they might remove huge squads of marker drones anyway, as Josh says. They might change it back to whatever it was. But also, you shouldn't be, fluff-wise, you wouldn't spam characters. You don't get firesight marksmen without sniper drones or whatever. And if you'll know this, because if you go to any Games Workshop and ask, what should I buy for my Tau army? They'll probably tell you Pathfinders. That's a huge problem for the rules writers, because it's like, how do you make that good? And the answer is, don't make the entire army dependent on them. You just don't do that. Make it so they are strong, independent units, and then if you pay the points of Pathfinders, you can buff them using this kind of buffs that Josh suggested. Like, you could do +1 to hit, or you could do really unique stuff. In 7th edition, if you Google the 7th edition Markalite sheet, you can see they did all kinds of manner of buffs, and you should look at them that way. Markalites are the big thing for me, because I think the Markalite mechanics is really cool.
I agree, it's so cool. And what I always find really bizarre is that if you fire a Markalite at someone, they can't also fire their gun, but they're pointing their gun at the thing they're firing their Markalite at. So you'd think logically the guy could pull the trigger.
Yeah.
You'd think so.
Because that's literally that system is what they use to guide missiles and stuff in real life.
Yeah.
And they can fire their guns still, I'm pretty sure.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I think there's making them not heavy weapons would also, if we're going to talk about changes, would also be a good thing. But but Ed, what I was going to say, sorry, one thing you said about this being a really good FAQ, and apologies if you were already going to move on to this, but I just want to, you were so excited about it, and we've now spent all this time talking about all the things that are wrong with Tau, right? So here's my question for you. It's a very obviously leading question. What from the Dark Angels changes have you seen that's made you go, this could just be a brand of golf club, but it sounds really good?
Is that the entry on the points list that says the lion? Or was that just the version that I got sent?
Yeah, that was the special behind the scenes.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you get a few thousand YouTube subscribers, you get that kind of information. That's one thing is good, worth mentioning. There's a bunch of stuff in the FAQs that are hinting at what's to come. Well, not hinting, actually kind of telling us, because GW have just, I assume, copy and pasted the points from Death Guard or whatever into the FAQs, so we can see that. And the other thing that's been good for speculation is that we can kind of guess what books are going to come next, because there are some things that didn't get much of an FAQ. So there's some stuff like that, which is really cool. And so the Dark Angels, for example, as Adam says, got a new entry called the Deathwing Strike Master, which is not a model that exists. So it's a new Deathwing model that's cool, or maybe it's just a Deathwing Lieutenant is one of the theories that people think exists, because you don't get Terminator Lieutenants currently. So maybe that would be a cool Dark Angels buff. And there's also there's something called Rites of Initiation, so you can pay to make things Deathwing, which is really interesting. It's a variety of points. It's interesting for a couple of reasons. So A, it's just cool, so you can have that kind of Deathwing focused army, but also currently Deathwing doesn't benefit a lot of the things that you can pay to make Deathwing. So maybe there's a further change to Deathwing that's coming, which might not be a buff. Maybe they've changed from the transhuman thing. So it's that's interesting. Or maybe it's because you get access to certain strats.
Conclave exclusive right there, Ed.
Maybe there are strats or things that affect them. Maybe it's as simple as that. I don't know. But it's as I said many times in this podcast, I'm a huge fan of wildly speculating about things. So there we go.
Well, the other thing I was going to ask, actually, what are Gene Stealer cults like right now? Because I think they're a fascinating army. Are they in a good place?
If you listen to the previous episode, we did a whole thing on it. Clearly, you've not listened.
I tell you what's actually funny. So one thing I mentioned in the last podcast, which I think is really relevant to the FAQ, is that I said the thing that Gene Stealer cults need that you have to tentatively give the Gene Stealer cults, as rules writers, is the ability to hold objectives, and that's kind of happened. So my favourite changes in the book is the reduction in points for the transports. So both the trucks and the rock grinders went down quite significantly. Trucks by 10, I think, and rock grinders by 15, and that's great, because that means that you can take more of them, and you're not going to be, they're not game-changing units, but it gives you more ways to hold objectives, and that's a super big thing. The hand flamers went up, which is interesting because, I think probably fair, because some people will just always take them, so that there's definitely an argument that you should pay a few points for them. And there were some things like aberrants where that was a good example where it was like they brought them down, and it was like by 2 points, and it was like, I mean, that's lovely. And thank you for that, but like they're still just so expensive for what they do, which is a bit of a shame. But overall, I think GT cults have come out really well, so I'm quite excited to see that.
I actually had a think about that over the last week or so, about how in order to help them hold objectives, and I thought to myself it would be fun if you gave them a slightly different version of objective secured. And you basically gave it something that is like, I don't know, like corrupting touch, or swaying it to something about the influence of the Gene Stealer cults on that objective or on things is something such that they subvert it, right? It would be that once you've controlled it for a turn, you can move off it, and you still control it until someone else has to come in and take it back from you. So you would be able to take the objective and move off it, and it would stay yours. And that is a mechanic that's in some scenarios, but this version of Objective Secured would replace that. It would overrule that. That's what I was thinking the other day.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff you could do there, but I think that I'm a huge fan of transports. So the fact that transports have gotten cheaper is quite cool for me. I quite like the idea of just running 4 trucks all just filled with acolytes or neophytes, just because their GC cult trucks are open topped, so you can just shoot out of them, which is quite fun.
That's a really fluffy thing to do as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. That'd be very narrative.
I do like the fact that it seems to me that a lot of these points changes have allowed a more narrative approach to the way you can build lists and still be viable or competitive.
As with any FAQ like this, it's a mixed bag, right? There are some things that they've done that you just think, why would you do this? This makes little sense. And then there are other things there where, and I say that, by the way, not just from a kind of power game up, oh, my favourite unit's gone up slightly, oh, now my list is unviable. I mean things where actually you've got units that aren't taken that often, and yet they've gone up in points, because it's just a bit like, okay, so I'm not going to take them in the same way.
Just so the listeners are aware, just before we started the podcast, Adam told us that he was binning his entire Space Marines list because Inceptors and Eradicators have gone up by 5 points.
5 points? How are we supposed to handle a 5 point? No, I mean that was an example I was going to, when you came to me, and sorry if I'm hijacking that already, was going to point to as an example of a good change, right? Is that there are other units where they do see lots of play, they have gone up, but come on, it's reasonable that the increases that they've done. So Inceptors, Eradicators.
I don't know. Eradicators felt really weak to me.
I mean, it's a good argument that Eradicators should have gone up a lot more, or had their abilities changed.
5 points.
5 points is eminently reasonable.
I think Eradicators should have been FAQ to be able to be taken in units of 10, and they should have been 5 points a model each. And their weapons should all be free. And they should be allowed to double shoot at separate targets, because honestly I don't see a competitive place for them as they are.
No.
Yeah,
they should have storm shields as well.
But there are other examples.
Storm shields should now confirm a 2+ invulnerable save as long as it's a Space Marine storm shield and no one else.
As a Custodians player, I take issue with this.
Oh God, what have we started? But there are other changes, I think, in the FAQ that and not just points changes, but rules changes that actually are just sorry, I'm rambling here, but what I'm agreeing with is what Ed said at the start, which is this is just a very good FAQ. Overall, there are going to be things to gripe about, there are going to be things that people are going to complain about, as with everything, but at the end of the day, this is good. And actually having a wide-ranging points update, early in the year is a good thing, right? Not that we can really play that much Warhammer at the moment because we're all stuck indoors because of Nurgle's plague. But the when it comes to list building, it's going to make for more interesting changes. So a good example of that is what they've done to the Tyranids. The Tyranids have come out of this quite well. So the Termagant with a Devourer, which is actually a half decent gun, went down to 7 points from 9. So that means in an overall unit, it's only a 2-point reduction. In an overall unit, that means it's going from 270, if you max it out, 270 points to 210. That's 60 points you've now got to play with. Hive Guard for the Tyranids went down. Now, Hive Guard are an example of a unit a bit like Eradicators, that every Tyranid player, Eradicators Space Marines, every Tyranid player is taking Hive Guard because they're really, really good. But the Tyranids as a whole, as an army, are not doing that well. So you can kind of see why they've gone, okay, well, we're going to give this unit that everybody's going to use anyway a little bit of a buff. So maybe they'll put some, some other things on the board elsewhere. Then again, Zoanthropes for the Tyranids went up. So they're an example of a unit that everyone takes because they're really good. And Quipster's doing the 1,000-yard stare here because he's just hearing, like Vietnam style, just gunfire in the background and just Winter's rolling psychic mortal wounds against his precious Custodes from his big block of Zoanthropes. So overall, I think a really good set. And like Ed says, seeing some of the previews for stuff coming, like the Strike Master, which is, as I say, I think sounds like a golf club, but I think it's just going to be a really cool Deathwing model, is really nice. And we've also got the points on the Death Guard side as well for some of their units. So the Miasmic Malignifier, otherwise known as the Plague Bong, which is that sort of terrain piece that's coming out. I think that's 77 points. So that's an interesting...
Wait, it's called a Plague Bong?
No, it's not obviously not called a Plague Bong. It's called a Miasmic Malifier. I can't even say it now. Hang on. I'm just going to look it up.
No, it's called the Plague Bong now.
Well,
we're known for renaming things.
On that, Adam, sorry, whilst you're looking up.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, one thing I was curious about, I just thought about with the Death Guard. I do remember, I think it's Plague Marines with 21 points, which seems great. That seems like a really... An Intercessor is 20 points. An Intercessor is fucking cheap. So, yeah, I think that's really exciting for Death Guard players to have the 2 wounds at 21 points and have -1 damage. What were the weapons like? Because it's a lot of the interesting thing about Plague Marines is the weapons. Do we know? Did they come out quite well, do we think?
I don't think they really made any changes on that. I'd have to have a check. I don't think. I think the main thing was just the 21 points. They did change the squad size. That's the only other thing. So they're now locked at 5 to 10 models. So you could take a squad of up to 15. So what people used to do was the big squad with a couple of the what do you call it? The
flails.
Flails, yeah, I was going to say maces. Yeah. But yeah, the flails. So you used to see a lot of those used. So it's interesting that they've gone down. The plague on the Death Guard, the Plague Surgeon and the Taliman also went up. By 15 points for the Plague Surgeon. So I think everybody is sort of assuming, again, thinking about indications for where the Codex is going to go, everyone is kind of assuming at this point that a Plague Surgeon will become a Death Guard, a properly Death Guard version of a Space Marine Apothecary, and get a proper, pick people up ability, which would be quite cool. And yes, it is called the Miasmic Malignifier. It's 75 points.
The Plague Bong.
The Plague Bong.
And Lord of Virulence is on there as well, isn't it?
120 points for a Lord of Virulence, so a Terminator Death Guard Lord with some interesting abilities. But I think the other funny one from the Death Guard for Chaos players out there is that Death Guard cultists went to 5 points per model, which is cheaper than standard Chaos Space Marine models. Notably cheaper than a Guardsman. So
the other one I think that's quite a cool thing that's going to change is I've forgotten his name, the guy with the bell, but he's got a new thing on there, hasn't he? Or something like that.
The noxious Blightbringer. So he's the guy with the bell, but the foul Blightspawn, who's the guy with the hose is really good in the current edition with some of the strats that he's got. He's actually gone down, so he's gone down to 75 points. So that's an interesting one. How he, again, another example of a good model you do see taken a lot, and he's obviously he's the one who gives the fight first ability. If he has a fight last aura, is what I should say. It's more accurate. His revolting stench. He's too smelly. So he went down in points, which is interesting. So does that mean his abilities are getting changed, or does that mean he is just getting a nice little points bump? But if you're a Death Guard, who knows? But if you're a Death Guard player, that's good.
Out of interest, which unit was it you said that had the numbers of them cut to 1 to 10, 5 to 10?
Plague Marines.
Interesting.
Yeah, so actual plague, just regular old smelly Astartes.
Where is that written down?
That is in, I think it's in the Death Guard FAQ.
It'll be in the Munitorum manual.
It's in the Munitorum. Yeah.
Wait, could you take them in larger squad sizes than 10 before?
Yeah, you could take them up to 20.
Jeez.
Which is one interesting. I wonder if they'll change that for Chaos Space Marines, because that does impact kind of your narrative. Red Corsairs, Black Legion, huge blobs of Chaos Space Marines.
That severely cripples my dream of doing Abaddon's Chosen of phalanxes of Chaos Space Marines, 20-man Chaos Space Marine Legion tactical squad size Space Marine forces, because it's the right way to play.
I mean, that's the thing, actually. It's the squad sizes back in the Heresy were 20-man squads. And I've always liked the idea that the Chaos Forces kind of just kept that. It's a differentiating fact more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose from a fluff perspective, they could make, I agree, it'd be cool if they could do that, but I guess the argument, maybe not for, it doesn't really work so well for like the Death Guard or any of the ones that sort of stayed together as a legion, even after the sort of the sundering of the various legions. But they can kind of make the argument that, over time they've been sort of whittled down over the long war, and there maybe aren't that so many left, and the gene seed doesn't hold, so they can't really create new ones. So it's like the smaller remnants of what's left. But I mean, that's a pretty weak argument, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just opened the power rating changes, and
Only person who's done that.
Plague Marines, shut up. So Plague Marines can still be taken in units up to 20.
Oh, fantastic.
It says models in units 16 to 20, and for those who care, power rating 20.
That's interesting.
No one cares.
For Crusade, maybe you can, but you just can't.
I would just like to point out, Quipster, that you said, it's so great that all of these changes seem to be really affecting the narrative, and now you're saying that power rating, no one cares. Make up your mind as to who you are.
I contain multitudes.
So
You
I was gonna say,
enigma of a man.
to go along the lines of what we sort of discussed with Quipster and Ed, I think my favourite change from the FAQs.
I mean, I haven't asked you yet, Adam.
I know.
I'm waiting patiently.
I haven't asked you for your feedback on the FAQ.
This is a revolution. This is a revolution. We're taking over. No, so
I do want to ask Adam a question, but I'll wait.
Can I ask? Can you wait your turn?
One of you can ask me a question.
Rich, what was your favourite thing about the? No, Adam, go on. You're queued up. Adam, what's your feedback for the FAQ? Good, bad, or ugly?
Oh, so I think good. I think good overall. I think there's a few things in there, as I say, which are interesting. I don't want to use the word bad about them. They're just interesting. They make interesting changes. But my favourite thing is the fact that GW confirmed, and the reason this is my favourite is because we talked about it a lot on the Blood Angels episode, and Rich is like nodding along. It's like Churchill and the Churchill nodding dog in the back of a car going over some speed bumps. It's a really big deal. They have confirmed now that if you have abilities that put it for Space Marines, if you have an ability or a stratagem or something that puts you into a doctrine or puts a unit into a doctrine, so combat doctrines here, and the rest of the army is not in that doctrine by virtue of you not being in the correct turn in order to have it, you gain all the benefits of that doctrine. The reason that is important is, again, speaking from Blood Angel's perspective here, you get the argument that was going around is that the Blood Chalice ability from the Sanguinary Priest, which says you can use it on a unit and put them, but basically their attacks are treated as if they are in the Assault Doctrine. The argument was that because it referred only to attacks, you only got the extra -1 on your melee weapons, right? The extra -1 AP. Now it it's overruled that completely. You get the full benefits of the Blood Angels in that doctrine, so you get the extra attacks from Savage Echoes, which is massive, as the kids said about 5 years ago, from that rule, which is a big deal. And if you're a Space Wolves player as well, it means you get your what's their one called, Savage Fury, I think is their equivalent, where they get, what is it? They get extra. No, they can't get
Exploding
extra. What do they
sixes,
get?
isn't it?
Exploding sixes? Yeah, they get something. It's the Wolves. I don't.
They
care.
get more
They get
attacks
something.
in a way.
So those rules, and again, that will apply across the board. So anybody who has an ability to put you in a doctrine, you get the full benefit. So as a Space Marine player, that is actually quite a big deal.
Well, Dark Angels have brilliant strategists, so that's confirmed that it gives you extra range. So that's the
There you go. You have So Brother Corbulo for the Blood Angels is the hottest of spicy foods right now.
He's also the tiniest.
I was going to say, he is hilariously small as a model.
It's not all about size, it's how you use it. Okay, Alex, you should know that of all people.
Says the one who's famed for having a massive penis.
Hey, some of us just have an advantage.
For a while,
I
we
like
kept it
to-
together, and we kept this classy, and then
I like to in this
GW
situation.
sponsorship a bit further away.
I like in this situation to remember the wise words of Galadriel when she said, "Even the smallest person can change the course of the future." And it seems that Brother Corbulo has changed the course of every Blood Angels list for the rest of time. Because why would you take anything other than Sanguinary Priests and and Brother Corbulo now?
You don't.
Like
That's the summarize it. You just don't.
in my head, that if you're taking a medallion of Blood Angels, you're taking a Sanguinary Priest with Jump Pack, you're taking Brother Corbulo, and you're taking Asterath the Grim.
Sorry, and Brother Corbulo he's also a normal captain. He's
the chief.
No,
he's the chief. He's the Sanguinary High Priest.
Yes, it's
Which is like
chief
an
apothecary, basically.
Yeah.
Wait, you'd have Brother Corbulo and another Sanguinary Priest.
Yeah. So Brother Corbulo, his Grail ability is an aura. So everyone within 6 inches counts as being in the combat doctrine, whereas the Sanguinary Priest selects a unit to do it. So you use Corbulo to walk up the board with your army, and you use the Sanguinary Priest to go flying forwards with the Death Company and the Sanguinary Guard and all that kind of stuff.
With all that blade guard he'd walk up with.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Who haven't received any changes.
Yeah, that was interesting. Considering they might just about to get transhuman physiology all the time, so that's going to be fun. Also, the ATV did change though. Also, I wouldn't mention that one. That was quite. I think people were quite rightly shocked at that when that came out. So that's, you no longer can res them. I think it also went up in points. So
yeah, it's absolute nonsense. Just an apothecary just being like, "I shall summon this broken down go-kart back into life using my Northesium, which is designed to operate entirely on organic material. I'm just going to use a hammer to repair this go-kart here. There you go, off you go. You're back alive again. Go and melt to someone for 80
it would be
points."
fine if the Primaris Tech Marine had the ability to do that to a unit of ATVs.
Yeah,
It's
just flip
not
it back
fine that, as you say, that an apothecary could just walk over, inject the ATV with some
Have some ginseed.
steroids, and it would just be like, "You have healed its machine spirit." Not the same thing as the as the mortal spirit.
If I drive, I go to fill up the car, drive into the Tesco, and the guy just starts injecting steroids into my car. I'm like, "What the hell are you doing?" He's like, I'm healing your car, sir.
And
It's
bringing
gonna
him
be
back
faster."
with full wounds. It wasn't gone before. You should see the state of your manifold, mate.
I mean, this is a good example of like one of those weird things that comes out of keywords, right? Where biker units have the biker keyword. They're not vehicles. They're not infantry. So, like, who in the Space Marine army does take care of them? Well, is it the Tech Marine? Well, they're on a bike or they're in a little go-kart, so you sort of would have thought so. But then there's still 2 Space Marines, driving about in it or riding the bike. So the apothecary has to be involved somehow. And I guess that was the logic, right? They were like, well, the apothecary, I don't know, maybe the vehicle's not broken. Maybe
team effort,
the orcs were really accurate, and they just absolutely slotted the 2 guys who are driving around in the go-kart, and the go-kart itself is fine.
See, I love the imagery though of just like the go-kart is like the ATV is completely smashed. The 2 Primaris Marines are like really badly wounded, and the apothecary runs up to the ATV first and starts like hitting it with a hammer. And these 2 Primaris Marines are just like, "What about us? Help us!" He's like, "Nah, you wait your turn."
I often like this idea that a friend of mine had of when he wanted to play like a kind of more narrative game. He said, "Do you mind if I treat the like the bikes and the Space Marines on them as separate, like in Lord of the Rings, where you can kill the horse and the rider comes off and the rider becomes a so for example, a rider of Rohan, you kill the horse, the bloke falls off and he just becomes a warrior of Rohan that you can still use." He said, "Do you mind
cool.
like if basically we roll a 4-5-6 when the bike dies, on a roll of a 1-2-3, the guy has died and then remove the model. On a 4-5-6, the bike has died and the guy gets to come off." And I said, "That's absolutely fine unless you're about to tell me when he comes off he gains the character keyword." And he was like, "Okay, fine, we won't do it."
A bit of a sidetrack, Josh. Is that why, like, with the new Earmare model, he comes with him on foot and also on a horse?
Yeah.
So if that. Oh, okay. I didn't. Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's
quite
really
cool.
cool.
So admittedly, my memory of Lord of the Rings is I'm going back over a decade now of playing of.
What? So
Playing
what administration was that?
Fucked if I know. No
At
idea.
this point, Obama.
Somebody.
It was actually the Merkel presidency.
Somebody was in charge of something somewhere. But yeah, it used to be that the horse could get hit rather than the rider, and you'd end up with the rider, which is like. It's pretty cool. And I think that is the reason, as you said, that's why you get them both in the thing, rather than buying two separate Eomer on foot and Eomer on mounted. Yeah. Same for like Aragorn, Theoden, all that kind of stuff. But I also believe it's so that you can choose to field either one, so you don't just have to field them on the horse, and then when they die, the whole thing's removed. Lord of the Rings fans out there, tell us more in the comments. Wherever this gets posted, wherever you
we
can
may
comment.
be doing a podcast on it in the future. Smallest. Adam, actually, as I mentioned earlier, I did want to ask you a question. I just want to get your take on 2-point changes in particular for an army that we both collect.
Hit me.
Necrons.
Yeah.
So what the Nightbringer and also the Reanimator. So,
oh yeah, so
what are your
yeah,
takes
so
on it, sir?
So the Nightbringer, for people who don't know, the Nightbringer went up 20 points, so he's 370 rather than 350, and the Reanimator went down by 30 points, and I can't tell you what it was or what it is now. I just know it went down by 30 points.
110 to 80.
Okay, to 8. There we go. Okay, so now you're going to see them about the same as you saw them before, which is never, because they have crap.
Well, that's
they
a
have
pretty
crappy
big
rules.
drop, though.
It is a big drop. It is a big drop. And to be fair, they do have some interesting abilities, and maybe we will see people start to use them because, in theory, they are now so cheap. The problem is within a Necron army, 80 points is a lot of dough that you can play with, and like you've got other stuff to spend it on.
Is the Reanimator +1? Is it just reanimation on 4s? Is that all it does?
Yes,
which is a very, very powerful ability. I use all there like that's not amazing. That is incredible.
Yeah. if you're taking, I mean, the thing is about it. If you're taking like Silver Tide list, so if you're taking lots of Necron warriors and bringing like Zeras, I can see a use for it. I think the problem with it is it's just very squishy, and anybody with any sense, I mean, the old, it's like the old thing with reanimation in the old days with Necrons. It was like, okay, well, the way you stop reanimation is you just focus down the unit and you kill the unit. It doesn't work like that anymore because of the way reanimation has changed. But now, I mean, if you're playing a Necron player and you've got, obviously there's other things to deal with them. But if not, just get rid of the Reanimator because it's pretty easy to get rid of and you target it. On the Nightbringer side, a lot of people are complaining because he's now 100 points more than a Transcendent Catan, which is the sort of unnamed one. He's only 20 points more than the Deceiver and the Void Dragon, and that's who he's in the same category as. I'd say the named characters and their abilities, I would argue, are better by some distance than the Transcendent Catan. So I think he is still worth it. I mean, you're still going to see people taking him. The Nightbringer is really, really, really good. I mean, if people don't know, obviously he has the Necrodermis rule, so he can only take 3 wounds a turn, or a phase, sorry. He heals. He's living metal, so he heals. His Gaze of Death ability doles out mortal. It's only a 9-inch or an 18. I think it's a 9-inch range. It's quite short range, but it doles out mortal wounds like crazy, and he has 2 attacks, one of which with his scythe in close combat, you just ignore any abilities that allow you. So he ignores invulns for a start, and you also ignore abilities that allow you to take like feel no pains. So he gets round and avoid, and also that limit wounds. So the argument is that his abilities basically allow you to, if he were to take on another Catan, he would void the take 3 wounds a phase thing, and he could just kill them in one go. Same for Gazgul. And other characters that presumably will get that ability as we see new codexes come out. So I think the points changes are fair. 20 points more is reasonable. You're still going to see people bringing the Nightbringer. I thought one of the more interesting ones, and Rich for you actually, that didn't get talked about as much because it was overshadowed by these points changes, is that the Triarch Stalker, everyone's favourite giant metal crab spider with gun thing driven by a
pretty
guy.
accurate explanation.
Yeah, it's a weird model. It's a really cool model, but it's a sort of slightly weird one because it doesn't have a base. It just has very big legs. So you can use it. You can kind of use it to block movement on the board quite effectively as well. But now it's got the quantum shielding rule. So it effectively has transhuman and a 5-up invuln. And you can drop a strat on it to give it a 4-up invuln in much the same way.
Spicy.
It is indeed spicy. But yeah, it's a cool unit. Also, the other thing the Triarch Stalker does allow you to do is if you hit with its guns, you get +1 to hit against that unit with the rest of the army. So it's quite a good model to kind of run out and sort of do some damage and then be used as a sort of he's shining a torch. He's shining a light. He's shining a marker light, as it were, onto another unit, and then the rest of the army takes advantage of it. And the Tau sit there and go, "Why can't we do that?" So yeah, he's cool. But yeah, Necron changes again. I thought they were good overall. And they'll say people will moan about the Nightbringer, but people are still going to use him. I'm still going to use mine. He's just a really cool one as well, even though he's an old resin model.
Is there any merit to taking all of them? Like, I'm just thinking, like,
yeah.
If you take all the Catan, and like, I know, obviously you can split fire, but like, if each of those models can only take 3 wounds, wouldn't that be something? Like,
Well, Adam and I can do that to you one day, Ed. I'll bring my Void Dragon. He can bring his Nightbringer, and we'll play against you and see what happens for a laugh.
We need to get someone with a deceiver, because then we can do the deceiver's power is he can like do a redeploy before the game or put people into deep strike. So he's really tricksy as well.
I think that would be a hilarious bat
Yeah,
rep
that'd
to
be quite
watch.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, you're limited to like 1 per detachment, so you'd have to kind of play around.
Okay. So
I'm sure you are. I'm saying that, and I can't quite remember, but I'm sure you're
I do
limited to 1 per
from memory
detachment.
think you're right, because they are pretty... They're all... I mean, the Nightbringer is very, very good, but they're all pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
which
I
works
bet
with the
they're
fluff
expected
as
for a
well,
reason.
right? Because these things are the caged shards of the evil star gods that the Necrons basically spent the latter years before, once they were turned into everyone's favourite metal robot men. They spent a lot of time fighting them and smashing them into pieces. So they only the idea with the Catan is like the Necrons don't just roll them out at the first opportunity. Like, they bring them out when they're taking on someone who's going to be a problem for them. And they're like, okay, so you have killed a lot of our regular legionaries. Say hello to my giant flying metal buddy here. And he is going to destroy you.
I think they do like a Team Rocket style introduction, and then they chuck a Pokeball out, and then the Catan comes.
With their like proper HP Lovecraft Catan names. Niagdraloth, I choose you!
Void Dragon! Hit him with your spear!
I mean, the thing I would say to Necron players who are complaining about a 20 points increase, let's not forget that we've moved past the days of the F.A.Qs where, for example, the Knight Castellan didn't take a 20-point increase; it took a 100-point increase, which was, and it also lost its ability to have a 3+ invulnerable save. I argued at the time that one, not both of those things would have helped, but instead it got both. It got hit by both of them.
When GW swings the Nerf hammer, it comes round. It comes back around and hits it again. It's like Centurions and actually the drones, as we discussed today. It's like there's the meme of stop. It's already dead. And GW love that meme. They adore it.
I was just going to say one thing. I think. Sorry, Josh. Actually, no. You're in charge. You go ahead. Apologies.
Don't anger the
Please
DM,
forgive
because you know
me.
what happened next week.
So, Adam, is there one more thing you would like to add?
There is, if I may. So what I was gonna say is we're talking a lot about the points changes. I'm trying to keep it professional, guys. No, we're talking a lot about the points changes. But
I'm not.
The other thing that affects your army naturally is going to be the changes to the core rules, right? And there have been some changes there that are quite important. I'm not going to talk about them in detail because I suspect somebody else needs to talk about them because I've rambled on for long enough.
It's going to take all my ideas away.
I'll hand it over to Rich on that one. But the reason I say it here is because it's to Josh's point, right? If you see something goes up by 20 points or 5 points or 100 points, right? Don't necessarily complain because actually you have to look at the whole game in the round. And if it turns out that your whole army of lots of big giant gribbly monsters has got a benefit because of certain changes to certain secondaries that Rich is going to talk about, that is actually still a buff for your army. So I would say to people who are listening to this, who, if you're new to the game, there's going to be loads of these FAQs. Points go up and down. As Ed says, the Nerf hammer goes round and round and round. This is turning into some sort of song. But, look, you have to look at it in the whole rather than just focusing on whether a particular unit has gone up or down. And with that, I will stop rambling and I will hand over.
Thank you so much for that. Really, really. I'm glad you. Yeah, I must just state for the listeners at home, when we play Dungeons and Dragons, I've already said it, but managing this lot is the worst. Because
I'm offended by that statement.
They all disagree with each other. Some of them walk off in an opposite direction, and we're all doing this digitally, right? So it's a little bit more difficult for me to manage these folks. So it'll be things like, we'll be like, you've come into the tavern, what would you like to do? And 4 of them will want to go into the tavern. One person will be like, I'm off to go somewhere else. And then they'll start talking about what they're doing, whilst the other 4 are talking about what's happening in the tavern. And I'm sat here going, what the fuck are you all doing? So,
and then there's a cat in a corner just smelling stuff.
Yeah, and then there's our next contender for biggest complainer of the FAQ. We have Rich. Is there anything you'd like to complain about or praise on the FAQ?
I actually don't think I have anything to complain about. I think it's good. I think it's made the game more balanced as a whole, outlying a couple of obviously outliers. But to go on to the point that Adam was making with the big gribblies, the big change that I really like was the 2 objectives in particular. So you've got Bring It Down, where they've kind of made it less rewarding to just destroy all the tanks. They've lowered the points you get for scoring them. So I think it is I'm just going to read it because it's hard for me to remember. It now awards 1 VP for each vehicle monster with 10 or fewer wounds destroyed, and 2 victory points for anything between 11 and 19 wounds, and then 3 for anything above that. So it's going to encourage people, hopefully, to take more loads of, with Astra Militarum, more tanks on the board, you don't get penalised as much. Tyranny players, those are big monsters, all the cool stuff, and basically in 40k that look really awesome, you can take more of them now, right? Which is only a good thing. Which also coincides a bit where the Astra Militarum have had some points changes as well, which means they can have some, a bit like what Ed was saying the Gene Steers earlier, they've had some point decreases with some of their transports and kind of medium-sized tanks, which is also cool. More tanks, the better. Does the
Baneblade now cost the actual thing that it should have, 100 points?
I don't think the Baneblade changed.
Because I fully believe that the Baneblade should cost 100 points.
Isn't that less than a Lehman Russ?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that would be less than Lehman Russ. A tank commander's got a point increase.
Hang on a sec. Josh, please explain your reasoning. Show your working.
Okay, so which is cooler, a Lehman Russ or a Baneblade?
A Baneblade.
Which would you like to see on the table more?
Baneblade.
10 Baneblades.
Therefore, Baneblade should be 100 points.
Yeah.
I
agree
mean,
with that.
It's why I think Land Raiders should be free. You should be able to take Land Raiders as dedicated transports, and if you take a Land Raider as a dedicated transport for your Warlord, it should be free.
Taking a Thunderhawk should give you more points to spend.
Yeah, if anything, if you take a Thunderhawk gunship, it should give you the bonus of its cost. So if you've got a 2,000 point game and you take a Thunderhawk, you should be allowed to take 3,500 points. But 1,500 points of it has to go in the Thunderhawk because it's dope.
I see no problems with this.
That's
I'm
why we
100%
don't write the
on board.
rules, by the way.
We don't write the rules because Games Workshop is worried that if people played our version, or at least my version of the game, people would have too much fun.
Well, we'd all be naked.
Wait, no.
your
One
version of the
person would
game-
have too much fun.
Your version of the game is just because the noise people make when you show up with the Thunderhawk and 3,500 points of like just Land Raider stacked on top of each other, which is just called Hammer.
Yeah, that's pretty much. No, I think there's so much stupid shit you could do with this game that I think very much pays into for my thing of opener narrative. Like Land Raiders. I'm gonna come on to that. I'll come back to you in a second, Rich. But this thing about Land Raiders, Land Raiders, you never see them ever anywhere.
Because they're crap.
No, they're not. They should be everywhere. Land Raiders are awesome.
No.
Land Raiders.
They should be good. They should be good and everywhere, not just everywhere.
Yeah, but I wouldn't change the rules on them. Like honestly, like a Land Raider for a long time has not been the mainline battle tank of the Adeptus Astartes. It has been the upgunned, heavier assault transport. It's not the battle tank, and yet it is used as a battle tank, not as a dedicated transport. I think it should be a dedicated transport, and I think the points should come down for it, because I would love to see way more Land Raiders on the table, because Land Raiders are fucking awesome.
Strong views there.
them.
Strong views
Wait,
there
you
on
don't
Land Raiders
count.
as part
You
of our
play
debate. Now back
custodians.
over to our secondaries correspondent, Rich.
Yes, we're going to go back to you, Rich. Have you got the, by any chance, have you got the, you've still got the secondaries rules open in front of you? Because I think an important one to discuss is the Abhor the Witch.
Dare you assume we're that prepared?
Okay, so you're not just taking all my stuff. So Ball the Witch was going to be the next one I'll go on to, because I mentioned in a previous podcast that Grey Knights are something that I'm interested in.
That's why I
they've
brought it
also
up,
now-
Rich. That's why I brought it up.
Thanks,
I
Josh.
remembered your Grey Knights thing, and I was like, Abhor the
Stop
Witch,
it.
that's going to
It's
be
such
great
a
for you,
flirt.
Rich. It's all this kind of, like, I'm trying to weave this podcast
our
together
sexual
for you.
chemistry.
And weave your sexual chemistry? That doesn't make much sense, but let's go with it. Let's roll with it. Let's ride this wave.
Poke you with my halberd. Right, so...
Is that a sex thing?
Right, so Abhor the Witch
It is for me
now
and Rich.
rewards 3 VP for psychic characters being destroyed, and which was 5 before, and 2 victory points for a psychic unit being destroyed, which is now was 3 before, which is just a good thing. It means that if you're playing Thousand Suns or Grey Knights or other armies with psychic powers, someone tell me if they're the other ones.
Eldar.
Eldar, yeah. That you're not going to get absolutely annihilated and take that one every single time.
Thousand Suns.
I said Thousand Suns.
I think it's great. Eldar are a great example. GSC it's a great example actually because we have great psychers in it. Before it was the case that you would never take the third psyker. Like you just couldn't do it because you're given 15 points. My only thing with Grey Knights Thousand Suns, I've seen a lot of people share the same thing as you, but my thinking is, aren't you still going to max it every time you play Thousand Suns and Grey Knights?
I mean, you probably will, to be fair.
I don't get why isn't it just characters?
I mean, if I was to put my fluff hat on, I would say post Psychic Awakening, probably people should be less fussed about hunting witches because there's a lot more of them out there. So really, does it even need to exist as a secondary?
Whatever all that, I do completely agree with you, Ed. I think it just makes it a bit harder to max a 15. I mean, you're always going to take it anyway,
Yeah,
but you're just going to have to kill more stuff. So, but I mean, when every single thing in your army is going to give away those points, then you're still going to take it. But
You're always taking what, 4, 5 characters as Grey Knights, so that's 12, right? I mean, and maybe one game, a couple of characters survive. You're surely not going to have many games where unless you completely steamroll your opponent. There's surely going to be very few games you don't just give away 10 points, and 10 of them I'm saying like lower band.
no, I see your point, but from my point of view, is GW looking at something and trying to go the right way.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate the effort, but I just think it's always going to be an auto take. I just think it'll be hard because I mean, like Grey Knights have a few tricks and stuff that can make their units a bit tougher. Whether it's gonna, the more I think about it, the more I'm just agreeing with you. My point is good. I can see 10 points, yeah, but I don't know. I'm trying to put a point spin on it.
Having considered it further, sod off.
Fuck's sake, Ed! I'm just going to bring a. You know what I'm going to do? My Grey Knight's army. I'm just going to bring a load of Land Raiders.
Yes,
There we
you
go.
should do that. You should bring all the Land Raiders because you can teleport your Land Raiders.
Yes, we can. Something
So
that
can
someone
you
told
in
me.
the Custodes over there, and so can the Death Watch. I don't know why you're bitching about Land Raiders. You can teleport your tanks.
Custodes shouldn't have Land Raiders.
Well, you're wrong. Anyway, does anyone want to talk
What?
about the... shut up, I'm the host. Does anyone want to talk about the wider game? In fact, I'm going to ask you, Quipster. What do you think about the wider game changes in terms of the advantages of going first and second?
See, you picked me because you know I haven't read
I
that
actually didn't know that. I thought I thought at the minimum you would have read the article and then gone straight to the Custodes bit. Do you know what the changes are?
Not a clue.
Okay, does anyone know what the changes are and want to explain it to him,
mean, I
and then
think
we'll
all the
get
rest
his
of- the rest
opinion
of
about
us-
it?
The rest of us do know. So now the first turn roll off. If you win the roll off, you don't get a choice to go first or second. You just go first.
What do you think about
Oh.
that, Alex?
What do you think, Alex, as a Custody player who has 2 models?
Actually, I've got 3 models. Can't get it right. But, interesting. Because that's the way it was sort of near the beginning of 8th, right? Or just in 8th.
At some point it was like that, yeah. But there was always
Yeah.
seize the initiative. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I...
Go on, express an opinion.
So
Go on.
having thought about it for literally 5 seconds, yeah, actually, I kind of get it, and I do prefer it because
Why?
it's having first turn gives you a lot of power for most armies, but for the armies that it doesn't, it's just a horrendous advantage to go second. So, not giving you the choice is kind of a balancing mechanic, I guess.
I like the way you managed to say absolutely nothing there. It was beautiful. If you go first, it's really powerful.
Hey,
But if you
it
go
is a
second and you're in
talent.
an army that benefits from going second, then that's also really powerful. So yeah, it's great. I'm sorry.
Hey.
That was me being a pedant. I apologise. No, you make a very fine point. Yes, but going first is very powerful. But perhaps if I may, it is the ability to choose which gives one
Yes,
the
it's
power.
taking away
right?
decision, isn't it?
So
Yeah.
even if you do, you may not want to go first. You might sit there.
That's
and go,
what I
"This is
said."
fun." Yeah, but I expressed it more eloquently. That's all.
So
No, I'm trolling you now. I apologise.
so on that, I'm going to ask you again, Alex. I don't know if you know the answer to this one. What are your opinions in terms of the scoring of points in the final battle round for the person who goes second?
Oh, I heard about this. Don't you score them at the beginning of the battle round rather than the end or something?
That's almost right. It's the other way around.
He just told you the answer.
So if you are a player if you go
Yeah.
second,
Yeah.
you score your points at the end of the final battle round rather than at the beginning. Instead now.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
before you would always...
why might that be good?
So, well, just to explain it further for him. So, normally, everyone would score at the beginning of their turn. If you go second now, you score at the end of your last turn. So, it means you still have an opportunity to score, even if in the last turn your opponent's blown you off all of the objectives, but you've still got some assets left. It means you, as the second player, can move on to those objectives and then score at the end of your turn. What do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a way of balancing the fact that in the last turn you could be massively disadvantaged for being in that position. That's something that came up in a game quite recently with me. I was playing against Tyranids, and it got to the end of the game, and we were just like, well, I've won. You can't score any more points. So, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a great change.
What are the rest of you
I
think?
don't see any major missteps really in a lot of what I've seen and heard about.
It's an interesting one, right? Because it means that your army construction might be a bit different. So, because a Custodes player, I think it'd be interesting for you, right? Because the problem you have, fundamentally, apart from your Virtus Praetors, and obviously they did get cheaper, your bikers, sorry, rather than using the sort of copyrightable Latin name that they gave to them, is that you probably want to have some like zippy units in your pocket. Because in a situation where actually you've been, let's say, squished into a corner as Custodes, or you've just managed, and obviously your guys are very tough, but you've just managed to lose a lot of units, having the ability to have something quick that can just jump out from behind cover and jump onto an objective in the last turn if you're the second player is actually really handy now, like more so perhaps than it was before. And I think the same goes for you know, I guess with the Tau, your cold stars, if you've still got one of them knocking around that can like zip across the board in one go. Or for like Blood Angels with the like or any army really. I'm thinking Blood Angels. 'Cause I'm thinking of what's it called? Not Descent of Angels. Upon Wings of Fire. But the any redeploy strats that you have, that you in your fourth turn you can go, okay, well this nice unit are going to disappear off the board for a while, so you can't kill them, and then in the fifth turn they're going to drop down onto this nice objective, and then boom, there's my, you know, or multiple objectives. There's 10-15 points for me at the end of the game. It actually does change the way you might think about your list quite a lot more than I would imagine people suspect, and it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, again, we won't know till there's tournaments, but it's going to be interesting to see how that changes over time as people develop their lists.
Just reading that made me think of like Ash Militarum and taking the Bullgrins with the Mauls to actually hit stuff off an objective. I don't know why it's the first thing that came to my head, because they don't have a lot of ability to like take objectives other than just blowing the shit out of everything.
I'll tell you why, Kate. I'll tell you what came to your head, Rich, because you saw a shaven-headed person that's angry and wants to run into combat and smash things, and you just felt a kindred spirit there.
I'm quite docile. I don't play any game aggressively. I'm quite calm, collected.
Are you lying to us or yourself?
Yeah, just for background for listeners, we should just say, because this is obviously a bit of an in joke with us, but we, you know, as you will be aware, both from listening to us talk about it in the past, and also if you have watched Quipster's little fireside chat video, one of the things that does come up is we do play a little bit of Call of Duty, and we have been playing it recently as we're all stuck in this god awful lockdown. And Rich, we love him both in real life and digitally on the battlefields of Call of Duty, because Rich is the human embodiment of the Red Thirst. And while we're all trying to be like tactical and super army soldiers, and you know, like, yeah, let's hold position here, all we'll just hear is, yeah, they're in here, yeah, I've killed them, and then a lot of swearing as he realises he hasn't killed the whole squad. And then we'll be like, Richie, okay? He's like, yeah, I've got them all. It's kind of like playing with the Death Company. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, Josh has had to execute me a few times.
And don't you forget it.
Yeah. I mean, I've only just worked off the ban I had from last time from swearing. Anyway, let's move on from that. I'm waiting for Ed or some of you guys. Stop swearing at 14-year-olds. I'm pretty sure he's older than me. Anyway.
I wanna just quickly ask you, Ed, as a master of ambush and a man with many plans in, you know, a generation in the making, does the changes to scoring in the final battle round help Genestealer Colts?
That is a really good question. So yeah, I think Adam summed up brilliantly, and Genestealer Colts actually do have a stratagem to redeploy for a unit, which is obviously really great. You might totally want to do that. I think the problem with Genestealer Colt is that you often get tabled for this in this instance. So I think there are going to be the points reductions help. It was primarily the vehicles which went down. Acolytes is still the same and such. So that's the only reason I think it might not help. But absolutely, Adam is dead on the money. Any faction with an ability to redeploy like that could see a 10-point bump at the end. So
here might be a more, I think, a better question. Is that change bad for anyone?
It's bad for gun lines.
Look at me, we're asking the good questions.
It's really bad for gun lines. For anyone who castles up and sits still, they are reliant in turn 5 of going, I've been scoring these 2 objectives every single turn, and all I need to do to win this game now, because you won't be able to score in your round, is blow that unit and that unit off that objective so you don't score at the beginning of your turn. That is what it changes completely. It doesn't make the castle totally redundant, but it does mean you have to move. You cannot just fortify one position and basically create, you know, killing fields of, if you walk out onto that objective, you're not gonna score it eventually. I'm gonna shoot you. I'm gonna kill you.
The only thing I would say nowadays with Ninth is that even though castle armies might exist, you still need to have elements of your army to go out, because if you just hold your objectives in your deployment zone, you're going to lose, because it's all about holding the midboard, right?
Well, I was going to say,
So-
I think Josh is right. It's bad for gun lines, but generally, and I say that as someone who has played quite happily a gun line, what's bad for gun lines is good for the game, fundamentally.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Right? If anything that encourage interactivity. The interactivity in Warhammer being getting in close and smashing each other around the head with various ridiculous weapons. But yeah, anything that encourages that is a good thing and encourages movement and doesn't just let you like go, I'm going to sit in the corner and fire at you with my mega super death gun. You know, it's just it makes the game more exciting
The
because
DMR.
well, yeah the DMR because there are armies that don't, and you know what? It's a really good example. We talked about this the other week on the podcast when we were talking about we were saying about our good and bad experiences in tournaments, right? And armies that do one thing and do one thing well. So the World Eaters army, the Khorne Berserkers, right? We know they got one trick. They run into you, they smack you around the head twice, and then they move on and try and do the same thing. They're not a shooting army. The age of them charging at gun lines was really bad for them, and it made the game really dull. When you've got a game that actually means they're going to have the ability to zip about in their rhinos and get on objectives, and you need to go and interact with them, that's good. It's a good thing.
Talking about berserkers and rhinos and stuff, I always thought that was such a mistake in the last edition, where a tactic used to be put a bunch of berserkers in a rhino, throw them up the board. When the rhino explodes, they all jump out and move a bit further forward, and then you charge from that. I just thought that was the most like hilariously Khorne thing to ever do. Just you've got all these Khorne berserkers firing themselves out of an exploding rhino into enemies.
It's all right, mate. Wait till you've got 9 Repentia coming up your jacksie out of a rhino. It's a similar experience.
It puts me more I'm starting to reminisce, thinking again. As I say, I always put it back to narrative. And what I'm thinking now is it means you've got opportunities to create more moments like the opening cinematic of Dawn of War. You know, when the tactical marine runs up the hill and plants the banner?
Plants the thing, and then all the drop pods fall.
Yeah, so if you think of that cinematic as a game of Warhammer, right? He's doing that at the end of his final turn because he went second. They don't start with the flag at the top and all get shot off it, and therefore they can't keep that position. He's running up there as a final last-ditch thing. Is your hero on the table in the final turn, runs onto the objective, plants the banner, and goes, "This ground is ours." And then the steel rain comes down, and
I like that voice, Josh.
everything is
Steel rain.
Everything is awesome, and the Space Marines win.
So you went from really cool to start singing a Lego song with "Everything is awesome."
What?
I will say though, if you think about the logic of that scene, none of it makes any sense. Because you've got all these Space Marines charging out of a defensive position, which they could totally hold, up a hill to plant a flag, which has no bearing on the fact that the drop pods are coming down.
Well, you need to let them know they're there, though, don't they?
Yeah, and your challenging of that cutscene, it explains to the listeners just how much you hate narrative. Because you're sat there saying, well, actually, the competitive thing to do would have been to hold the position as a gun line so they can get reroll ones from the ancient.
I'm gonna step in. I'm gonna defend Quipster, which is something I very rarely do. So enjoy this, which is that he's not. It's not that, Josh. Right? I understand where you're coming from, and I would see that. It's actually, and it's the same as something I noticed earlier. It's the Imperial Fist in him. Right? It's the same as when you said about fortifying with a gun line. His ears perked up and he just suddenly was paying attention. It's because he's just thinking. He just doesn't understand the logic of why you wouldn't just hold a defensive position and be really dull and then be like, we've only got Daddy's space hand and the rest of him's still at the shops and he's going to come back. Because, that's what Imperial Fists do.
As I guess also similar for Custodies, they are sentinels. They stand still and defend stuff. They don't generally go out and do things. I get it. I retract all of my negativity towards you, Quipster, and I seek your forgiveness.
I shall be magnanimous, and you shall therefore have my forgiveness.
I now take that back because you made it weird. I shall be magnanimous. What's that all about? Come on, man.
And to our listeners, this is pretty much how most of our D&D sessions go.
Pretty much.
But apart from his canon be dead by now, or Quipster would be dead by now.
Does anybody have anything else they would like to cover from the F.A.Q? Any glaring hotspots that we've not missed? Any annoying irritations that we haven't discussed or, in fact, helped scratch for you? Does anybody have anything of that?
Ed's in a 3-point start position.
I was going to say, the one thing I think that was really great to see was an FAQ, because one of the things that did worry me a bit about 9th edition, and I think we mentioned this on the other podcast, it was the best set of rules they had ever done. But then the first FAQ they did to the main rule book, I don't know if you guys remember, was really small. I think it was only like 4 points, and that was a bit like, oh, this is a little bit worrying, because in 8th edition we had kind of, a rule set that was great, probably not as good as 9th, but they were quite quick on the FAQs, and the FAQs in 8th, if you remember, they got smaller and smaller and smaller. But now it's really great that they are confident to reevaluate their work and change things. And I know for a lot of people that can be off-putting, because people say, I don't like to have to keep up with all these rules changes, and that is a fair comment. But for me personally, I think as people will know by this point, I do really like it when they spend a lot of time looking at game balance and changes and stuff like that. So it's great to see.
I think there was quite an important change actually for the custodies that we haven't discussed yet.
Really?
Something to do with your gunships.
Is it that your unstoppable destroyer is now stoppable?
No. It's that you can actually. They did change that. I've yet to look into that, but they changed the rule that about big flying units. Now, say the Marauder bomber or the Custodes gunships, you can, as long as you place their base inside the deployment zone. They say it doesn't matter if bits of the model are sticking out over the edge of the table or whatever, which means you can actually use them in a game, which is fantastic.
I'm just looking out for you, man. I was hoping that you would jump in there with that one. So when can we expect to see a Shadowkeeper's Ares gunship?
Sometime in mid-2023.
2023. Would you like to hazard a guess as 2023? Actually, yeah, it will still be the Biden presidency, won't it? So.
It will, yes.
Or Kamala.
Well, or Kamala.
That's possible. I would really like to see you paint something big in your Shadows Keepers scheme.
I will be getting some of the Caladius grav tanks at some point, and I do have a plan to get an Ares and an Orion at some point, but that's a bit further down the line.
Or next week.
No.
Spend all your income. Spend it.
No.
Please, for me, do one thing for me.
No, I'm going to buy a robot arm first.
A robot arm?
Yeah.
What?
For all those lonely nights.
No, it's a camera. It's a camera thing. You'll know it when you see it. Trust me.
I don't think anybody wants you to film that, Quipster, but cool.
You're buying a robot arm for what? Sorry, because you gestured to us on the camera, but
filming stuff.
For filming stuff.
Yeah.
What does it do?
It's a robot arm. You put a camera on the end of it. It moves the camera around.
What's wrong with
Is this an idea that someone has sold to you, and they're like, yeah, this is £1,000, and then you're like, oh, what does it do? They're like, mate, it's a robot arm, isn't it, mate? It's a robot arm.
Are you going to attach it to your Google Home system?
What's wrong with?
Let's not go crazy.
What's wrong with a tripod?
It's a bit static, really.
I don't understand. I really want to know. As somebody who makes YouTube videos and I make painting tutorials, so the gesture that you're giving us on camera is you bought a robot hand to help you film painting tutorials. What? Yeah. Why do you need movement in that?
Okay, trust me. When you see what I do with it, then you'll understand what it's for.
Is this part of your OnlyFans plan? Is that where this is coming in?
Yeah, I think this is weirdly dirty, and you're just not telling me.
No, it's not sexual at all.
What this sounds a lot like is when if you go to Epcot at Disney World, right, and you sort of they make jokes about it on stuff like The Simpsons, right, and they go through what they thought the house of the future was going to be like in 1950, where it's we've got an atomic powered dishwasher. It's a bit like that. It's entirely pointless. It serves no function. But do you know what? We think it sounds futuristic, so Quips is going to bolt it to his desk and fire it up with Alexa.
Can you send me a link for this? Because I'm really confused as to what the point of it is.
I will send you the link, and then you'll be like, that's cool. Why are you going to use that? And then when I use it, you'll be like, oh, no, I get it.
How much is it?
Probably $1,000.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is...
What?
Okay, so...
Buy $1,000 worth of Warhammer.
Okay,
I want my robot arm.
Guys.
Oh my god!
Instagram, right? The post that needs to go out, and in the story, what I want you to do is I want you to put this thing out that says it's a poll, and the poll has to be: should Quipster buy an Ares and an Orion gunship, or a robot wanking hand?
Oh god, I'm so happy you said that because I was literally thinking that.
Please, can we say that he can buy the latter if it's called the Fist of Dawn?
You know what's so funny about this? Me and Adam had a conversation the other day about whether we should like make the podcast less explicit, because we were like, it's not okay for families and stuff. And I was like, maybe let's turn down that kind of content. But yeah, we're further than we've ever been.
We haven't
Hashtag robot wanking arm.
So in summary, guys, the F.A.Q really good as Ed says to get it soon. There's lots of changes in there, listeners. Go and check them out for your army. Make sure you have a look through. Make sure you get a handle on the rules changes, because obviously once we start to play again, and maybe the wrong word there. And also remember that if you have a grand to drop, you have two choices. You can buy some nice resin, or you can buy a robot wanking arm. I've been Adam, the legal department. This has been the Conclave.
This is outstanding. We saved the best for last. You are always great value for money, Quipster. Sorry, I've got tears coming out of my eyes.
When I get my robot arm, then you'll understand.
I just find it
Trust
so
me.
funny. I find it so funny. Sorry. Yes, I think we've got nothing left to discuss in the worlds of Warhammer. I think we need to have a chat offline about using bionics. But yeah. So let's go around the room. Quipster, aside from OnlyFans, where can people find you?
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans. Amazing. Yeah, it is about $1,000. Sorry, I just googled it. Yeah, they can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Quipster Nerd, and they can find me on Instagram at Quipster Nerd.
Adam, where can people find you?
You can find me at ADR Wargaming, all one word, on Instagram.
I'm always expecting you to say Four Seasons Landscaping, and I don't know why. Ed, where can people find you?
Wow!
You can find me at the Sandman Hobby on Instagram.
And Rich, where can people find you?
That was smooth, Ed. I like it. You can just find me at Reza Prime on Instagram.
Wonderful. And where can you find the podcast? Somebody who actually knows the words.
You can find us at the Conclave 40k on Instagram. I've nailed it this time. I've learned it. And you can find us on all the podcast listening places as well.
Can you say that?
I don't know why I'm doing jazz hands.
Can you say the Instagram handle 3 times?
The Conclave 40k, the Conclave 40k, and the Conclave 40k.
There we go. We've got all 3 things for the board. Yeah, I've also been Josh the Warhipster. You can find me in various places: YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, and Ko-Fi. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you had fun, and we hope you enjoyed some of those revelations there at the end. I'm sorry, I still find that really funny. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you very, very, very soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.